Hello team, welcome back to another Line War cast. This is your map. It's a big lake in the middle with four gases. There's a city up in the north, there's another gas in the top left, two cities in the bottom. We can see that aka Misk, who is in blue, we will refer to them as aka for this game. They are spawning right here in the bottom. I'm not really sure where Animorph's going at this point. Animorph is in red on the bottom right side. Animorph going bottom right, aka again in blue going to the left. AKA is going for a barracks immediately. This is a very, very popular way to be playing right now. Probably the most reasonable way to open. 6 racks immediately. Let's see what Animorph's up to. Pretty much the same thing. 5 racks. Here comes the 6th one. And besides maybe one factory at the start of the game, we're not really expecting much factory tech or like higher tech super quick. But we'll see. Maybe this moves away from barracks super quickly. I mean, Animorph's going for a 7th barracks. And AK probably will go 7th barracks as well, I'd assume. I played a few days ago. There's a lot of experimenting going on with just like max barracks strats or barracks with one factory. The bonus of this is that you can cap a lot quicker because infantry are the most effective capping unit. So if you just get a bunch of infantry and they're quick or more quick with the patch that came out a few weeks ago, it's a solid strat, and it can actually be very fun to be microing all the infantry and getting good infantry trades. 7th barracks for AKA, and we're just watching both players expand at this point and wait until they see each other. Just under 300 income for Animorph, or AK, and 332 for Animorph. Is that true? No, okay, I got it wrong. 332 for both players. We can check the lines. These are actually kind of cool. These like fancy single lines to get the most territory covered. I guess like a two lane one out away from the barracks and then split up in singles. However, bet this is Animorph's lines, a bunch of doubles everywhere. It's kind of interesting seeing how different players open up with their lines, especially at the beginning of the game when the income means so much. And it's going to be relatively slow until they meet in the middle of this field. Otherwise, I mean, income's going to probably match 344 for AK, 344 for Animorph. I mean, really, both players went for 7 barracks, are getting the same sort of northern capping going. Same thing with the south, I guess. Animorph's got to the south of the map a little bit quicker. But geography-wise, forests and mountains on the left for AKA, but a lot of forests and mountains on the bottom right for Animorph. It's actually quite a symmetrical map in a lot of sense, especially since this mountain range cuts down the middle of the map. So ultimately, we'll see who trades better with the infantry and what either player, or both players rather, decide to tech into it and when the time comes. 428 for Animorph, yeah. 404 for AK, but depending on how quick they are to, or close they are to capping more territories, this should be pretty even. Otherwise, a big question will be what happens when they get to this mountain range. That'll be something that is fought over. There's a city in the top right and a city right on Animorph's starting position. 2 cities for AKA. So, I mean, really the map is pretty even. This is the city that will be contested. And gas-wise, as long as both players are going majority barracks, gas isn't as big of a deal. But both players should have, yeah, like a relatively safe gas. This is Animorph's gas in the back, and AK's gas probably right here. Another one up in the north. Neither player, I think, can afford another racks. Animorph can now, so let's see if Animorph goes for a racks, and yes. They do. Closer to the front lines to get the reinforcements here quicker. Animorph's now beat AKA kind of to the center of the map, which should mean that AKA has more capping in the top. But let's see the income. 524 for Animorph, 500 for AK. I wonder if the mountains are slowing that down. Neither player will have noticed that the other one is close. We can see AK's vision at this point is really limited to this. I mean, the same thing for Animorph. So neither player, knows where their opponent is quite yet. AK's got some money in the bank. Let's see if this is another factory. It's a town. It's a town that, I mean, it's a very safe town with the industry in the center here, especially because the production kind of covers this naturally. So let's see how that plays out. I mean, it usually takes about 7 minutes to get income back. Animorph is also going for industry. So when you put this building down, it's about 7 minutes to break even. So it's 6.5 minutes in the game. Just for reference, towns will generate more than industry. Industry is cheaper than towns. So Animorph could be building another factory or industry, and they are right now. As you can see, and I wonder what Animorph or AK is going to do, pardon me. Is this just going to be industry, or is it going to be another barracks? Very imminently going to discover that their opponents there. We heard the cow noise. That means that it is a industry for AK, and another cow noise, and that's obviously the... Oh, shoot, actually. I don't know. We're hearing cow noises. Both players are putting down the farms, and that's why we hear that. Here's contact. So at this point, Animorph sees that AK is here. AK doesn't quite see Animorphs here, and I think that's partly because of just how many units Animorph has. It gives more vision. And now, both players are aware of where the opponent is. Let's check out income 788 for AK and 834 for Animorph. So Animorph's a little bit ahead. I guess it's just all these northern mountains that AK runs into and Animorph doesn't. Although this is more wooded and mountainous, so not really sure. Here comes the first big fight of the game. And this is a huge line for Animorph. It's a huge front. Now a factory goes down, and that's going to give a good amount of like strength to the army of Animorph. I mean, infantry is fantastic, but artillery is still very good against infantry, as long as the artillery doesn't get jumped on. AK is doing kind of like a soft retreat here. Back to this line. This is a good use of line commands and getting them all lined up. I mean, really, Animorph has more infantry here. So in a second, Animorph should be able to group up a decent, like a decent sized army. AK putting down 2 more barracks. I like this. I definitely like that it's 2 more barracks. And AK is making their way to the top. I mean, kind of beating Animorph, really, to this mountain range, which I think is kind of important. AK is making 610 a minute at just over 1,000 income, and has matched what Animorph is doing. Animorph's going for 2 factories, so it's really the barracks play, the more barracks heavy play from Animorph or from AK, and factory, not heavy play from Animorph, but certainly these 2 factories are the what Animorph is building in place of the barracks that AK built. 2 barracks down here for commandos. These are both just commandos, surely, in that barracks. In fact, now I'm wondering about the math, because how did those 2 barracks go down? I guess it's like these 2 barracks are what Animorph put in the south, and then these 2 are worth the factory that Animorph built. Another barracks for AK. These really come down to numbers. Animorph's going to win on this fight, kind of in the south, but obviously in this defensive position, AK is going to get a better trade. Although with that number of infantry, this defensive position doesn't really matter much. Animorph's doing well to push right now, but this is so many barracks that are now coming online for AKA. So let's see. I think Animorph's going to get up to these barracks and have to turn around. It's important to keep looking at the income. It's just more barracks for AK. 1178 for Animorph, pardon me, and 1211 for AK. So AK's got an advantage a little bit on the income, and I think this is going to turn in their favor relatively quick. Although it looks very scary right now. Animorph's still sending stuff up north to cap, although AK has a huge amount of infantry up here. Ultimately, I think AK will need to back up or fall back a little bit, at least group up. First artillery piece for Animorph is getting into the mix a little bit. That's another barracks that we hear and see on the side of the screen. And I think I heard, yeah, another barracks on the bottom. And I love it. I think there's just so much you can do with a gazillion infantry right now. Plus 544 for AK, who's at 1300. Plus 446 for Animorph, who is just over 1200. Animorph has some money in the bank. This artillery is going to be big. Because AKs, pardon me, I keep messing up both players. It's both A's. My apologies. But because AKs, jeez. Because AKA, who is in blue, is going for so many infantry, if Animorph, who is in red, can get a bunch of artillery to get good trades and keep that artillery alive, it could be very efficient for Animorph. These units are digging in, but they probably will still have the fatigue problem. Right? They're not fully dug in. This is a decent amount of infantry for Animorph, but ultimately it won't be able to get all the way up to the barracks. The reinforcements from AK are going to get to the front line way quicker than the reinforcements for Animorph. Another factory, or rather the first factory for AKA at the edge of this tree line. This is another factory in the south. It's actually it's good positioning of the factory to have one in the top and one in the bottom. Oil for Animorph. So Animorph must be going tanks, I'd think, because I haven't heard an airport yet. Okay, well, there you go. That's clearly an airport, and it's right here. 3 factory, 1 airport. I really like this. That's a very, a lot of power units can come out of that forest. 3 factory, 1 airport, and certainly strikers could be decent against these buildings. Animorph's vision, they see the barracks outside of the forest. Can't see the barracks inside the forest because of the stealth bonus. This is ultimately, I think, very good for AKA. This is a cool looking attack with this, like, these 2 side angles to have flanking infantry and get like the biggest concave possible. And I hear another barracks, 2 more barracks in the bottom for AKA. And I'm still all for it. So these artillery that are getting into position now, unfortunately, there's not enough infantry to kind of protect them, and that's why AK or Animorph is going to have to back up. Because you really want the artillery in the back lines, right, and then infantry protecting it. If AK gets their infantry haste moved and just sprinting on top of a bunch of exposed artillery, that can be a very good trade for AK. In the top, who makes it to the mountain first, it will be kind of Animorph, but AK has so many units up there, it's going to be hard to keep that mountain. 1526 for Animorph, just under 1500 for AK, so technically Animorph ahead on the income a little bit right now. 2nd barracks in the top for AK, so this is 3 barracks total. A bunch of, 3 factories total. A bunch of industry, and a 4th factory that we just heard, probably in the south, although no, it's in the north. And AK going forward, 2nd airport for Animorph and 5 factory. I mean, both players have the income to be doing this. I almost feel like I heard another barracks. Go down for AK. This is a meat grinder. This is the perfect situation for artillery where they're just allowed to sit in the back and, you know, constant rate of fire at the infantry. And because AK doesn't yet have artillery, the first piece is coming into play now. This is definitely good for Animorph. Very interested to see what the planes are that are going to be built. So it's going to be interceptors, or pardon me, strikers from Animorph. It'll be great to be able to click down these buildings. Animorph can clearly see that there's factories out in the open. And no SAMs as of yet for AK. And no SAMs are being... Here comes the... No, that's an artillery piece. So no SAMs yet for AK just in general. And AK is going to have to back up here and kind of regroup, because I think this is ultimately just getting funneled into a very good line of artillery for Animorph. Let's check the north. Yeah, so numbers-wise, I think AK is going to end up clearing this. 2 more barracks to support. Animorph doesn't have any barracks in the top to reinforce that, so that mountain range will definitely be held by AKA. This is a good group up by Animorph getting ready to grease these units, although it's going to be a lot of infantry because there's 5 barracks in the bottom for AKA. just over 1,600 income for AKA and just under 1,600 for Animorph. So the economy has been swinging back and forth. It's very close. More barracks for Animorph in the bottom. I love it. Huge group of infantry. And another factory for Animorph that we hear, and it's in this forest, which is huge. I mean, imagine a nuke right here. I think it would get all 5 factories. Not that AK is in a position or would want to be making a nuke. This is a good grouping of infantry flanked by the artillery, although this is a lot of artillery for our Animorph, and not all of this artillery for AK is shooting, and that's why... Okay, now the move command goes. This is definitely going to be good for AKA, I want to say. Just naturally, I think AK's units are going to reinforce quicker. And the infantry for Animorph is thinning, which is the real problem. So once AK's infantry get rid of all Animorph's infantry, they'll be able to get on top of their artillery, which they're not. The artillery obviously isn't as effective when infantry is fighting. I love this barracks follow-up from Animorph, and here comes the first strikers. It's probably a target command on this building, and it is. 2 SAMs are definitely going to be able to take out at least one of the strikers, probably 2, because they won't get it on this second pass. And in fact, the strikers might not even get this factory. I would have thought that the strikers would have got the factory and one of them would have got out. But that's why we watch the game, and that's why we play the game, to learn these things. This is a great counter push from AKA. It's a lot of artillery showing up for Animorph, but there's just not really enough infantry. And see, these infantry are just sprinting forward, right? I guess there's actually no sprint command, so that's just how quick infantry are, but either way, they're starting to get on top of the guns a little bit, especially here, and this is crumbling for Animorph. The bottom side is definitely going to be good for AK. It's just the numbers game at this point, and the top of the map, AK is pushed through, which this is the big problem, and Animorph kind of knows it. 2 barracks in the top to try to defend this. That mountain range is actually enormous, I'd think, because it's a great pivot point at the top of the map. 1679 income for AK and 1622 for Animorph. Animorph's obviously behind in economy right now. The south isn't really working. It's a lot of artillery for Animorph, but this is like enough artillery for AK. Strikers could do good to thin this out because there's only SAMs at the top. More factories for AKA. I mean, it's really just going to be artillery infantry duel, it looks like. I mean, these strikers are here, but there's only 2 of them. It's good concave from both players, really. I think a little bit better of one for AKA. These infantry going through the forest just aren't going to be able to do it because it's just they're slowed down so much by the forest terrain, and it's so much artillery. Let's check the income. We can see Animorph is almost out of money at 1550, dipping into the negative. AK, on the other hand, has money in the bank, has a lot of economy, a lot of income, and I think this is a turning point. These commandos got to do something, and it's unfortunate because AK has made a great play by putting this defensive line at the bottom. So Animorph doesn't really have a way to, like, anywhere to go with those commandos. There's no way they're going to be able to get by all of this infantry. This you know, like a lot of racks, that kind of mass infantry style. This is not mass infantry, obviously. There's SAMs and artillery mixed in, but it really clogs up like all these open fields. Like, where are these commandos supposed to go? 1775 income for AK. We're not going to look at Animorphs because there's no way that it's doing better. This actually turned into a fight. AK took this fight with 3 barracks reinforcing. And if AK has enough, this is enormous. And AK will have enough, I think. So if AK can get rid of those barracks and keep pushing with 3 of their own barracks, I think this is like the beginning of the end. Especially when Animorph loses all this artillery. A nuke for Animorph, I like it. Especially on this income. I guess that's why Animorph doesn't actually have the money, because of this nuke. Although the income is also going in AK's favor. It's just the right number of SAMs, really. Like, unfortunately for Animorph, they've just kind of run into a grouping of a handful of SAMs that have gotten such, like, good trades against those strikers. Wonderful last hit. More barracks for AK. This is just quite the fight. Holy cow. No gas for AK, and why would there be a need to have gas? It's all gasless units. More barracks. That's what we hear. Animorph's running out of money, and AK definitely cleans up in the top. That's huge. That is huge for AK. And if I'm Animorph, this is a tough position to get out of now. This barracks in the north is probably to try to help out with at the top of the map, but in more of a defensive position. Good flank from Animorph. There might not be enough infantry to get this done. That's just not looking good. And with the strikers, I mean, this is great. There's a decent amount of SAMs here. SAM positioning wise, if AK gets these SAMs underneath these strikers, it's huge. Like, these strikers haven't done like a ton. A lot of artillery for AK. And the fact that AK has artillery down here in the south now is really bad news for Animorph. Look at these lines. This is line war, people. This is line war. Great grouping of artillery here. It's just not, like, part of the problem, it seems, is that, like, there's not enough infantry here. I don't want to say that. That's not why Animorph, I think, is getting pushed back here. It's just really, there's so much production. I can't count nearly this quick, but I feel like AK has more production on their side. I like these barracks in this mountain and forest for Animorph to really try to win this. I mean, it's been great pressure that Animorph's put on here, and especially building this kind of forward base has helped with this reinforcement time. These SAMs have been coming in clutch. Yeah, that's just tough. I mean, Animorph has like 3 planes now, right? 1881 income for AK, 1478 for Animorph. And on the top of it, the AK is just going to keep pushing. And importantly, this is now taking away from Animorph's income. Every territory that AK takes in the top not only gives them money, but it takes it away from their opponent, which is huge. This is a great concave for Animorph, and this is enough artillery that AK is going to have to back up potentially. Because this infantry at the top is going to live. Here comes some more planes for Animorph. I wonder where they're going. Probably the south. And they are going to the south. Really to deal with this artillery. I mean, 4 artillery pieces against this many infantry, if AK can protect that infantry, it's actually pretty big. We hear more barracks for AK somewhere. I'd assume it's in the top right of the map. Because Animorph's really on a timer at this point. The top right of the map is being taken away from them, so the income position is only going to get worse. And so you would think that Animorph would be needing to push here, and AKA, while being able to cap on the top right, could be a little bit more defensive or picky about where to fight. I'm kind of waiting for a big pullback from AK, because, well, maybe they don't need to. Animorph's got a good amount of people in the bottom, but like, look at this. This is huge. This is so much income. AK is almost at 2k. And let's see how close to Animorph's nuke is. There's no nuke even being built because Animorph doesn't have the money for it, which is unfortunate. A lot of medics being needed. A lot of artillery guns still going to the front for Animorph. tons of infantry for AK, and I mean, really, I don't think this has been all that efficient in the bottom, but AK just does more stuff. Let's see if the planes can get a good volley this time. Certainly one's going to go down right off the bat. Probably one more plane, I'd assume, is killed. Although, how many SAMs can Animorph get rid of here? One? Definitely one. Maybe two, unless these strikers are already out of missiles. Animorph's still doing a good job to push here. But Animorph's money is going down, right? Negative 300 a minute. Animorph's is plus 245. And AK backing up, and I like that in the south, to back up a little bit, group up. Animorph definitely can push in the bottom. This might feel a little bit scary at the bottom of the map for Animorph, but really the key of the game is up here in the top right. This is just so much economy that typically would belong to Animorph. Let's see if there's any more development. Not really. 2 airports almost full of strikers. Still a decent amount of SAMs for AKA. We can see what the factory production is like. It seems like it's a mix of artillery SAMs still. This defended line of artillery is going to take a long time for Animorph to kill. This is pretty good. Strikers going to the top, that's pretty good. I mean, that is a good call. Because the strikers haven't been able to do anything really over here. It's just too many SAMs. They've been getting, you know, decently poor. RNG isn't the word, but just the way they naturally pick up the fights against the units. Ultimately, though, AK just has so much money, and this transition in the air makes a ton of sense. Because AK off of this bank, helicopters, strikers of their own, whatever, would be huge for this. To be able to deal with all this artillery specifically. Although Animorph is going to get here, and then it's going to be very hard to push through this actual, like, final line of defense to kill the buildings. Strikers did decent. Animorph's going forward while AK is trying to dig in. Ultimately, Animorph's going to be able to take that back. But in the south, this is a huge breakout. All of this needs to be diverted from the northern part of the map, like of this. What I'm trying to describe is you can see these artillery guns going down to the bottom instead of to the front line, which means the Animorph has less that traditionally would be here. Animorph is going to get pushed back, ultimately, especially because of this. There's no way that they'll be able to hold the bottom, I don't think, and the top at the same time. Over 2k income for AKA, 1250 for Animorph. The top's going well, but Animorph would definitely have to push this all the way back to the mountains. And there's still enough infantry at the very far right of the map for AK that capping time is... it's going to be quite quick. The plane, it's helicopters. Helicopters out of the airports for AK, who doesn't have a ton of money, but relative to the opponent has a bunch of money. Probably a gas pretty quick out of AK to deal with these, and like to supply these 2 helicopters. In the south, this is a decent amount of artillery and infantry to keep that artillery safe, which is the important part, or one of the important parts. Animorph's got a good amount of planes now, but unfortunately it's like a little too late. I think if these planes were able to do a little bit more and get a little bit luckier on sniping a building or two, it might have been okay. But at this point, Animorph's going to realize, especially once, I mean, just a grouping up of the units up here for AK will probably be able to deal with all of this. And these units on the right continue to take away from Animorph's income. Huge concave on that artillery. This artillery in the forest is trapped. And AK or Animorph, very good sportsmanship and very strong game sense to realize that's now it. This would just be a slow push to end the game. This plane is stuck in space. That is wild. That is a cool trick. Thank you so much, folks, for tuning in. Good game by both players. Very fun to see the new patch and see how the top players on ladder are dealing with it. If you want to learn more about the game, check out the Line War Discord. There's folks who stream on Twitch. I stream on Twitch. If you'd like to go check out the category, come say hi, watch a game. Absolutely feel free. We'll see you around. Have a great night, day, evening, whatever it is for you. Peace. Enjoy.